Jonathan, looking good.
I should probably stop my dishwasher. Can you hear it?
No, I
I'll
can't
go
hear it.
stop it. I'm gonna go stop it anyway.
Okay, okay.
2 minutes, and then that should be it.
It's
I'm gonna
cool.
like stand up and I'm gonna be in like gym shorts.
It's cool.
Good to see
I'm not wearing
you.
anything under here.
Underneath.
It's just business on the top and Winnie the Pooh at the bottom. Are you feeling good? Like, are you comfortable? Got the
I'm
beard looking
comfortable.
nice.
Well, I'm talking to you, so it's more of like it's very chill. It would be if it was somebody else, I would be like, what do I say? I need to write down like my list of stuff.
Yeah,
But I mean, I'm very
yeah.
comfortable talking to you. Well, I would just like America to know that I did not prepare for this. So America, this is all improv.
No, it's all good. I'll help guide the conversation, and I mean, I guess we're already recording, so let's just set the background a little bit. Jonathan, my friend, my old college roommate. I don't remember how long we lived together. Like 3 years?
Dude, it was a
It's a
good chunk
blur.
of time.
Yeah. What what do you remember about living with each other?
I remember that we had two amazing dogs that
Uh
tore
huh.
up our couch like to shreds.
That was on my
Um,
list. We had a half-eaten couch. Yep.
we had some amazing friends that would come over and record. We had a barber that would come over and cut our hair. I don't know. It was a good time. It was really a good time. I remember that you cooked a lot, and
Did I?
yeah,
I don't
you
remember
cooked a
that,
lot.
but
Yeah,
I felt like we cooked the
and I
same
didn't.
things over and over.
Yes, but I didn't know how to cook at all.
I remember you always made like nacho dip.
That was one of two things probably that I knew how to make. The other was peanut butter and jelly.
Uh huh. Uh huh. Uh huh. We had some oatmeal packets. I remember the oatmeal packets.
Yes.
Feels like when we lived together, we were in this space where we went to college, and then when we graduated, we went immediately into work mode. After we graduated, maybe a year or two, we were living together, but we were just at work. We were on grind mode. We were new out of college. So I guess I never asked you, like, okay, what's the journey? Like, where have you been since then?
I would say that those years were super formative, not only
Mm,
for the sake of like learning how to do what I do now, or like the building blocks for what I do now, but also I was very sheltered growing up. I felt like I was super socially awkward. So being around you guys like helped me to learn like the do's and don'ts and not to be so awkward. And I did feel very socially awkward throughout Full Sail, and even, even years after that, I felt like it was like a
mm,
culture shock thing, just being around different types of people. I had to learn real fast how to deal with different types of people.
mm. What was it? The talk, like,
But
was it the conversation piece, or was it just like the day to day type of life in
I would
general?
say, yeah, it would just be like day to day things, like just knowing what not to say, what to say, stuff that I had not experienced, the adversity I did not experience in the small town that I grew up in. You, Richelli, and Becca, I feel like were so forgiving with me. Whereas like you were kind of like tolerated my goofiness and like, I was probably going overboard most of the time and you guys were like, all right, reel it in, dude. Like, so I was
I
very thankful to have you guys in my life.
We were such like dreamers in that, like, we would create these business ideas. We would figure out how to make them happen. You were really creative in that, like, I don't know. I think our mix of friends were the perfect kind of combination of like execution, operation, creative, dreaming, but also like logistics. I always saw you as the creative mind and like vision. Do you see yourself as that, and has that changed?
Um, I I would say that you guys are super creative. I wouldn't say I'm any more creative. I just
Sure.
I tried at that time to adapt to fit in where I could. But learning After Effects, being forced to learn that, I have used that even to this day. I use After Effects, and it has been super valuable, invaluable. It's I'm so glad that I started then because it helps me to make money now. So
Yeah, I remember you kind of getting into After Effects, and like it all started with school projects, trying to figure out how to
yeah.
make things look cool. And yeah, so is that how your work started? I mean, you would say your main thing is lighting design, right? Like you're a lighting designer
Yes.
at the core.
Yes.
So after college, where did your career start? And if you could just walk me through a little bit of like the resume in some sense.
Yeah, I was freelancing in Orlando. I eventually decided I was going to move to Dallas and just start over there and kind of start freelancing, which was a very scary move. And was freelancing there for a while to really get established there. And then I was pretty busy, and I started working for this production company out in Dallas. And that's all sort of how I got hooked up with Khalid, who was a nobody at the time doing small theater
Yeah.
gigs. And it was like almost like I got the gig. Well, they were like a production manager from I was on tour with Bush, who's a rock and roll artist, and they're like,
Yeah.
I have this kid that's doing this thing in Australia. Do you want the gig? I was like, I've never been to Australia. Sure. So I flew out to Australia like the next day or something like that. Met Khalid and the whole team, but it was very small. But they were selling out every venue in Australia like crazy. Like the lines were like wrapping around, and I was like, all right, this is like my shot. I've got to stick with Khalid because he's blowing up right now. And I tell you, it was like a rocket ship. It was like holding on to a rocket
Yeah.
ship. The first couple of years for working for him, we went from small theaters to large theaters to arenas to stadiums to Good Morning America to Coachella to like honestly like I was super inexperienced at that level and very insecure, made a lot of mistakes, was just trying my best. I was like in survival mode for like
Yeah.
years. And it
Did you feel
just,
like
I learned
everybody?
so much.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Did you feel like because so your first gig with Khalid, which is just like a massive artist now, did you feel like the team that was there because they were kind of on the come up? Do you feel they felt the same way, or did you feel like you were the only one that was like the rookie or something?
I don't feel like I was the only one. I know that a couple of the people had done larger tours, and the band had done some larger gigs. They had worked with J Lo and some bigger artists, Janae Aiko, people
Hmm.
like that that I had not worked with before in the pop world. So, but I did feel that sense of being like new and being like under the microscope. Like if you mess up, like you could mess this whole thing up. You could lose this gig, and this could be like your only shot. I kind of always had that insecurity, so I was always kind of on defense, which was something that I learned. You know, looking back, you don't know it at the time, but looking back,
Sure.
I'm like, why was I so defensive about so many things? And would take things very personally if like I was criticized, which I've
Mm,
learned to like not do that. But you know, you live and you
interesting.
learn.
Yeah. So is it that cutthroat that like at that time, if you make a mistake, there's a good potential that you could just be cut and like let go?
The Yes, the vibe when you're starting out, especially in the LA scene, is that if you don't have a seat at the table with these groups, they don't want to see your face. It's kind of the vibe.
Wow.
It's, you know, it is what it is. And I was definitely on one of the first Khalid tours we had our support artist had texts that were like, I knew that they knew that I was new, so I was definitely watching out, like watching every step that I made because I felt like they were right there behind me to catch me fucking up, messing up. And
Yeah.
so I was super insecure and super, it wasn't good for my mental health. And
In
so,
what way? So like are you talking about like in technical sense like oh you forgot to connect one of your movers or something like that or address the wrong mover or is it like he chose the wrong color? Like, what is
no, it
the
wouldn't
thing?
be something creative. It would be something like an element of the show. If an element of the show doesn't work, if an IP address is off, that's going to be something that's talked about and becomes a big deal. And, you know, and it can come back to the production manager like, yo, your LD is like fucking up out there. And like, you need to
Yeah.
bring somebody in and kind of like will sell themselves. Like, I don't know why he's even out there. Like, you need to get somebody else. Like, it's very like you have a lot of people, unfortunately, that do talk about you. And I had to learn that like that's none of my business. And I just have to be my best and not worry about that. But in the beginning, I was very worried about, you know, like who's talking about me? What do these people think about me? Now I could give two shits about what
Yeah.
people think about
It,
me.
has it improved at all over time? I mean, as you've gained the reputation and the skills, or do you feel like the environment has changed at all, or is it still the same?
No, what I've learned is that that is all that is all like those people that are judgmental, and I'm not saying I'm perfect either, but
Yeah.
the people that are judgmental are usually also insecure and inexperienced, and they're trying to validate themselves. And I've just moved into circles of people where we're not competing anymore. Like I'm friends with the designers on other tours now, and it's like we're collaborating at this point, and I'm like hitting someone up and being like, I really loved what you did on Justin Timberlake on this song. Like, how did you do that? Like, they're not insecure. They're not like worried I'm going to take their gig. So they'll like, oh yeah, I used this macro, or like point me to the website, or like I have a lot of friends, and like it's, you have to just realize like if you're confident in yourself and you're a nice person, like people will help you out, and
Yeah.
confidence goes
Yeah,
a
I
long
think
way.
right, yeah, if you're secure with your work and what you do and what you offer, there's no reason to cut somebody down just so you could look better. Yeah, you're right. That's like a clear sign of somebody who's not as secure in their skills or abilities.
But I think that everybody is on their own journey, and even these people that I worked with years ago, they're different people now too. Like they're not the same people. And like I'm sure if I
Mm.
ran into some of these people, we would be cool at this point, because I guess I'm getting older and we're all getting older, and it comes
Yeah.
with age. And you just become more
Yeah.
forgiving and you become more understanding. And I don't, I don't hold any grudges towards anybody. And in fact, I appreciate the pressure that it put me under, because it forced me to like get my shit together really quickly.
Yeah. Right.
So
So when you got that Khalid gig, were you immediately like L1 lighting designer? Like were you the top of the
yes.
lighting chain? Okay.
When I first started with him, I was LD designer, operator, programmer. I was doing everything. When we got into 29, the production manager, we were in Europe, and they were like, Khalid's doing this US tour, which was the biggest tour we've ever done. So they brought in a design firm called Silent House. They are amazing. They are the best. They're doing, the Taylor Swift, like the biggest shows, the Middle East, the biggest festivals in the Middle East.
Okay.
They have like a long list of clients like Pink, Gwen Stefani. I mean, you could go on and on. But they came in, their team came in, and it was like they designed, programmed, and then I was taken under their wing. And their programmers, Dan and Manny, came in and programmed, and I was under them. And at the time, I was like, honestly, at the time, I was like, kind of like, ah, shit, like this is me losing my gig, or I was very insecure about that. I was like, oh, like I'm not good enough to program this tour, and oh, they don't value me. But like, I needed that, because those dudes are so good at what they do and so talented, and I was able to watch them and be like, you need to see that with your own eyes, that you are not as good as you think you are. So I decided to change my mindset and become a sponge and like soak up everything I could from these guys. And they were awesome, and they taught me so much. And had I not been taken under their wing for the weeks that I was, like, I wouldn't be where I am today. So sometimes you need that kick in the ass, or
Yeah.
you need to be like humbled and brought back down, just so that you can develop more, you can learn and grow as a person.
Yeah, it's
So
like you almost couldn't deny, like you didn't blame the decision because the technical skill was so good. It was almost like you just had to respect it. It was just like you couldn't
yes.
not. It's almost like they're so good that okay, I know I'm not at this level and I need to change my act real quick or else I am gonna be cut out of this thing. So okay, I didn't know that this happened. So an artist typically has like their go-to crew, and if they go on a big tour, sometimes there's design firms that will
Hmm.
do all of the creative of it,
Hmm.
or like, and then you guys just operate the
Yes.
the design. Okay, so how does that process works, and how do you get involved with the actual lighting design of a show of a world tour?
So what'll happen is the designer will come in. It'll be one person, but they'll bring their team in. So it'll be the programmers and the video designers, the video design team. So at that time, we had like, it was like crunch time. We had like 3 weeks to put this together.
Wow.
So they had their programmers, and then they had their video team that was building everything out in like, After Effects and all that. And then they were sending the projects to Russia to be rendered at render farms and then sent back to us, because we had this like
Wow.
giant wraparound screen. So the render time on it was like 25 hours per file. So if like if they showed it to Khalid and he was like, can you make it yellow instead of red? It was like, ugh, we got to like go re-render this. So it's like a whole, it's like a large team of people coming together. And then through rehearsals, the programmers are usually working staggered shifts. So I was running like the rehearsals with Khalid during the day, and then Dan and Manny would come in and do the overnights and then hand the file back over to me. I would run the rehearsals with the updated cues, and it would just go on like that. But on the road, there is it's not just like pressing go. Like on the road with a design firm like that, I go out, I make sure that they're hanging everything in the right spots. I'm the tour programmer, so I've got to point all the beams in the air, make sure everything looks straight. Because, if you have like 96 beams in the air and you have one that's kind of like tilted off to the side, like all of those presets have to be touched every single day because you're in a new arena every single day. Right. So it is actually a lot of work on every side.
Sure.
Then when we go to festivals, I would take that file and I would clone it into the festival file, which is like I'd import their rig into that tour file, and then basically copy the programming over and then update their positions and presets. And that's a whole other thing.
Oh, because it's an existing setup that's not like already created for the show. So do you just like select and choose certain elements of it to
you say
into the festival?
Yeah, you'll say like if if you have like a bunch of strobes and they have 20 strobes, you say, okay, like what strobes do I want to clone into this rig, because that there's different hits. You know the show at that point, and you know how it works, and like the different stabs of music, the accents and stuff. So you're like, maybe I don't want to clone all the sides. I want to clone the centers. It's a very creative process, and it's strategic, and it's not something you just show up and like, okay. It's like you really have to think about it to get the best result.
You're not like writing those hits, right? Like, or is it time coded in?
Most of it's time coded. I am controlling front light on, Khalid key light. I'm calling spots most of the time and controlling light on the band, controlling atmosphere haze. So there's a lot going on at front of house, and I'm talking to video because we're bringing in iMag into the screens as well.
Okay.
So like he'll say like, how we doing, Dubai? And then I have a fader on the console, and I can bring his face into the center screen. So like they can see his face because he's super tiny from the nosebleeds, stuff like that. Timecode is driving the show, so everybody's chasing timecode. We have a playback tech side stage, and then like that session that is running the tracks is also sending me code, which I'm chasing, videos chasing for the video content that's synced to frame. So
if there's ever a point where either the show has to stop, Khalid decides to go off script and go, I want to see everybody in the audience.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
There's checkpoints within the timecode where you can resume that master.
That doesn't, timecode will continue running. He would have to say stop the song, and then every video would freeze. So I would take video down, and then lights would just be in the whatever. If we were in the chorus look, I would just stop everything from moving, and it would just sit there. And then if they started the song from where they were at, or they would probably start over, I would just refresh as soon as the song started over, and everything would just jump back to the intro, and it would just be fine. And then if he calls out, like I want to see your hands or whatever, mole phase up or LEDs up, just so we can see everyone's faces.
I missed this. So do you run the video as well, like the playback?
I do now. Now. So
is that a lot more tricky? Is that trickier to manage both?
It's a lot more pressure because we don't use Silent House anymore. So I've taken over as the programmer, and I program everything, visuals and lighting. And so I have a separate server that's running video, and that's chasing code. So I'm doing two jobs at the same time, but I've gotten used to it. And I was doing that. I've done that on other tours, so I've just kind of grown into that role. But it makes more sense for me to control both, since they're so connected. They're so tied together, like visuals and lighting. And our creative director, Levi, he uses this company, and they send me the visuals that are time-coded, and then I distribute them on the video walls and make it look good on the festivals and all of our one-offs.
In that kind of content.
Yes, they're a big firm that does that.
When you went on that world tour and you have the design firm that designed the show, did you ever veer off of the plan and you're like, I think this would be cool if we did this? Or is that like a big no-no?
Me in that role, I know what looks good, and I know that, like, for instance, like the first time I ever met the programmers that were programming lights, I went in like, oh my God, who do these guys think they are? Like, and then
Mm.
Dan, like, I think he was working on Silence, and he was like, you want to see what I've done so far? I was like, sure. And he played it for me, and I kid you not, I almost cried. I was like, Dan,
Mm.
this is so good. So I'm gonna do what's best for the artist. If I feel
Mm.
like it's not meshing well, then yeah, I can change it. That's not a big deal, and I'll talk to the production manager about it. But I've never had to do that with anything Silent House has done because those dudes are all like so good, and
Yeah.
there's no need for that. Now, have I corrected things I've programmed and thought looked whack? Like later on, like this song, why is it purple? It needs to be green or whatever. I have done that,
Mm.
on the day of show, like, and that's pretty
Yeah.
easy to do just with the way I'm set up.
Before I forget, I want to know your thought process in like, why is this song purple and it should be green? Like, I don't like, how does that work in your head? Like, how does that work in your brain?
I don't know. I think it's something that is like a curse to all lighting people. Is when you hear a song, you see a
Okay.
color because you could
Mm.
play a song and I can tell you in my head that it's giving me this energy and
Mm.
it just comes with it. I don't know what it is. There's no formula. And like
Yeah.
me and my business partner Damian, he might come up with like I'll do a song in blue and he'll be like, "Oh, I would have done that in red." Like so it's really up to the person, I think.
Oh,
I don't
that's
think any color
interesting.
is better than the other. Yeah,
Yeah. So it's like,
which it happens a lot
what's that? The color change?
that I'll program something for Damien and he'll be like, "Yeah, let's change that to blue," or whatever. Like, and it's like, cool, whatever.
Right. I get so excited when people talk about like intuition. And I always find that like with intuitive decisions at the highest level of craft, this show is called Craft Talk. At the highest kind of level, there's just no explanation. You just make different choices based on this like gut feeling, which is really interesting as far as like what you do as a lighting designer. Because okay, so say now like you had the design firm designing the show, and you're saying at this point you're the person now, right? You're doing the design and
Hmm.
programming.
Yeah.
What's your thought process when you're building the show as a creative person? Is that all gut based? Like, what do you think of when you first listen to a song and you're putting it in the board?
So this is my process, which I learned from Silent House. So my process is based on the way that they do things. So I don't want to take credit for it, and
Mm-hmm.
I've adapted in ways. But how I really look at it is like if you were to send me a song, I would listen to the song. Like I'd take like an hour. I'd go for a walk and I would listen to it, and I would be like, and I don't want lighting or visuals to ever be like something that people are staring at and like, oh, that light is cool or whatever. Like I want this to translate into energy so that the audience is feeling it and not seeing it. So I will, this is going to get really technical here,
Go
but
for it. Go
I
for it.
will
I
throw
love
the
it.
track into Audition or Reaper, and I'll lay it out and I'll start with the kick and the snare and the hi-hat. So I'll go through and I'll stripe tracks for those. And I literally will sit there and like hit, kick, snare, snare, snare. I'll get that all into the tracks and into the console. And so like I'll play the track and I'll add, and I have the rig in 3D, which I have sitting here. I'm not going to turn my computer around, but like I have the rig in front of me. And so like in the kick, I'll be like, these lights pop on, these lights pop on, snare, these lights pop on, these lights pop on, all this gesticulation. And so I'll be like, okay, like, and I get it to a place where like the heartbeat of the song is there, and then I add color, and then I'll start to add in accents. And Khalid's band is like so good, so there's like a million accents, and I'll start to play
Yeah.
with that, and then it will like, it's almost like an aha moment for every song. I'll be like, oh my god, and then it will come to me, okay, this is what the song needs to look like. I'll just start throwing things into the song, and then it becomes like a really cool looking song. But it just all kind of starts with the kick and the snare and the hi-hat and just kind of flows from there.
Do you think about like technical, like the practicality of the design versus the creativity of the design? Like, what's the percentage of just like purely creative, like, I'm going to go here, I'm going to go there, versus I need this key light there?
It's I mean, it's like equal, I would say
Mm.
50-50. When it comes to the programming, it's in terms of technical and creative, like I know that I'm going to use these fixtures for this big moment, so I'm going to figure out a way to take them out in a way that technically that they can move up to this position and then have time to sweep down, like stuff like that. Yeah, you have to really think about the technical side and the limitations of the system that you're working with. And then from a design standpoint, when you're designing a system, when you're designing like a lighting rig for any artist, you do want to think about how easy is this to load in? How, is this going to take an eight hours to load in, and I'm not going to have any time to work with the rig because it looks so creative, but you can't really do anything with it because you've taken all the time of the day. So like that also comes into play, which is why I lean on my partner to do, like, he's like our lead designer, and I defer to him basically on everything. He's super experienced.
So you've had to pull back because of like economically and the efficiency spectrum or
And yeah,
something
and the
like that.
efficiency
You're,
of
you're
like knowing like rigging for this like design is going to be like 1,000 points. So obviously like you gotta like rigging's going to take all day, and it's going to be super expensive, and it's going to eat the budget up. So man, it's a game. it's a
yeah, it's like a
you got to
like a
really, it comes with
Sudoku.
experience. Yeah.
Right. I was looking at, so you have a company, right, called 145 Creative Group. It's a very
Yes.
music theory term there.
Yes.
I found it interesting that I'm on your website right now. I'm clicking through it. But one of the main pages, the main kind of slogan is audience is everything. I found it interesting that you were talking about how like you don't want lighting to be the focus in the sense that like it's distracting. You want it to be converted to energy. And it's very ironic because lighting is like, I'm lighting. Like, look, it's like blind you in the face, but you don't look at it like that. It's you're thinking about the audience in a sense of like energy. Have have you always looked at it like that? Like, at what point did you go very energetic based versus just the physical flashiness of it? No pun intended, or pun intended, I don't know.
I think it's just experiencing it myself and going to festivals or going to shows myself and like having that feeling from the audience's perspective and saying like how this is making me feel gives me goosebumps. It makes me emotional. And whatever they're doing right now is working because I'm focused on the artist, and I feel like I'm on the same wave as them right now. Like we're together because the energy is here, the energy is right, and it's not distracting, and but it's also not lackluster, it's not boring either. So I think it's just comes with me like watching other amazing LDs doing what they do, that it has inspired me to be just like them and
Yeah.
be better,
So
hopefully.
how do you ride that energy? So like when I'm thinking about like an album, right? Usually albums have like a through line in that each track could sound different, but it's like in a cohesive like piece as an album, there's like a commonality within it. How do you know what I'm trying to say? Like how do you keep each song interesting but not just like so different that it throws the energy just left and right and nobody gets the wave?
That is a good question. It's tough because I'll give you an example. A few years back, we did a show in the Middle East, and the band completely, they were like, we're going to do all new arrangements. So like anything you have, just it's going to be all off. So like the songs, like chorus is in a different spot, so it's almost easier to start over. So it was 27, or we'll say like 27 songs, a song will take me around roughly 4 hours to a whole day to program one song, have it completely time coded and all that. So I had never done that many songs back to back before, like just, and
Yeah.
I think that they gave me like 11 days or something like that to do it. But I thought, oh, I can just work. I just was dividing the time out, like, oh, I'll work 8 hours this day, I'll work 12 hours this day. And I just like wasn't thinking about my creativity and my mental bandwidth.
Yeah.
Like just to take on like how do I make these songs all different, and I didn't have anybody working on it with me, and it was really hard. I would look at the songs and they would look all the same, so I was really having to think outside of the box and start. I would go watch shows, not to steal ideas, but like just to like like as a palate cleanser. Like I would like stop and then go watch something just so I was like not watching my own work. And I learned a lot from doing it like that. And now me and my partner work together on almost every project, and I will send stuff to him. I'll render it out, send it to him. And usually he is so good, and he'll, oh, change this, stop that from moving. And then I'll do what he says, and I'll be like, oh my God, that looks so good. Like it's like, it reminds me that like, I need to work together with other creative people.
Yeah. It's probably so, like when you're in the weeds, sometimes you can't get out of it, and you're just like cranking away, grinding away, and then somebody makes one simple suggestion and it unlocks the floodgates, and then
it can be like
almost
the simplest thing.
Right. That in itself is almost a palate cleanser as well. Like you handing it off to someone that's trusted. You can't just hand it off to everybody, right? Like you got to be able to like really respect their work for you to be bought in to like their suggestions. That's really cool. So do you think about like the climax of the show? Like, do you think about the climax of the show in that, like, there's the highest point in the energy? How do you arrive there? Like, does somebody make that call? Like, I want this part of the show to be the biggest part of the show.
I make that call. And when it comes to, like, lights, I can't speak for any of the other departments, but when it comes to lights, I know what I want the most memorable moments to be of the show based on the set list. And it all depends on, like, how the song flows, and it's changed over time. Like for Khalid, it used to be Young, Dumb, and Broke, and then it moved to 18, and then it's moved to Silence, and then it's moved to Saturday Nights. Like because the arrangements have changed to allow that to happen. And so, yeah, I'll just emotionally feel it. I'll be like, this needs to be when people are as focused as they're ever going to be on the show. Like I just feel it out. And you know what? It's like the most rewarding feeling being at front of house during that moment that you've planned out a month ago and seeing phones start coming out. It's like, oh, okay, that was worth it. And it's kind of an adrenaline rush and like a hit of dopamine because you're like, you know what? I love what I do. Like that mental breakdown where I called my mom and I was crying because that has happened before. I've literally called my mom, like, down on myself or thought I wasn't good enough. And then like my mom's like, you're crazy. Like you need to go take a nap. And it just makes it all kind of worth it in the end. The work is worth it.
Was there something certain that like made you feel that way, that you weren't good enough? Like, was it like a thing you did in a show and somebody gave you bad feedback, or?
Oh, I mean, I've had bad feedback before, but
Really?
I think that and you and I think are similar in this, where we hold ourselves like to a really high standard. And then when we feel like when we're not hitting that standard, we're like very hard on ourselves and we don't forgive ourselves. Well, I can't speak for you on that, but like, I will not forgive myself. I will like know that I wasn't as good as I wanted to be in my head. And then I'm like downing myself and I'm like, you know what, maybe I just need to go to another field and just start over. And and I am not perfect and I'm still working on it. And I will probably be working on myself till the rest of my life on this. So I'm just being honest.
Yeah. And how do you close? There's always this idea of what you want your work to be. I'm sure there's like levels where you're like, I'm not there yet, right? Or do you feel like you've arrived?
Oh, hell no. I do not feel like I have such big plans.
What type of things would you, in your experience, what type of things do you do or think about to kind of get closer to your aspirations in what you want to achieve?
I would say that I used to think that was something that I could plan out and say, like, I need to save up this much money and get this. And I've realized, or you know what I mean? Like I used to think that there was a certain process that you could take to get there. I've realized that if I continue investing in myself and I continue bringing good people into my life, I will just get there, because as I've let go of like those like rules and things that I've set for myself and like, oh, I need to be doing this by this time, or I need to have this computer or this license, or that's like not healthy mentally. But as I've let go and just tried to be the best version of myself out there, like that's coming back to me faster, and I'm like more opportunities come to me just trying to be the best me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and it's your mindset's already been there, it seems like, for the last little bit, in that you were welcoming people who have that you could recognize that has just like skills above you at the moment. That alone, that humility is the only way that someone has a chance to keep moving up into like their skill set. So like given your experience all these years, are you able to kind of reflect now and see how much you've accomplished? I mean, you still have so much to go, but like I'm sure like in the last 10-15 years we were so focused on grinding, sometimes it's hard to recognize what you've done. Are you at that place yet, or are you still trying to get there?
I'm still trying to get there. I feel like I fall short in so many areas. You know, it's like people that they start a fitness journey and they look every day at themselves in the mirror and they see no changes. But if you fast forward and you go like people that take a picture every day and you see it in fast forward and you see all like the huge change, I think like maybe other people see what I don't see, but I am always like feel like I'm behind the curve and I'm like, oh God, I got to try harder, work harder, you know? So I would say I'm proud of myself for where I am, but I'm not there yet.
Yeah. That's a really great analogy, the way you put that, because yeah, it's like the day to day, you just don't notice it. So you don't feel like anything is like improving. But when you like look back or look at like kind of outside of yourself, which is impossible to do, that's really the only time where you can go, wow, I did do that. Well, I mean, I guess I'll say it. I'm extremely proud of you. Like I've always seen you as someone who like, I don't know if you feel this way, but I always felt like you had like this singular focus. Like when we met in Florida, you always knew you wanted to do lighting. That's what I sensed, at least. And I can't say that about myself. Like I kind of just flailed around. Like I knew I like creative work and all that, but I don't know. It's something that I really respected about you, and like to know that the artists that you're working with, you're like doing the thing. You feel like it. You know what I mean? Like you're working with major artists, and it can only get like better from here. I don't know.
Dude, thank you so much.
I don't know if you could recognize that. I feel like it's a story that I have with people. Like I know the guy who does lighting for Khalid, and he's done. You know, like there's so many people. I feel really lucky that I feel like I've connected with so many talented people. You know, from people from Florida. Like the whole reason why I started this whole thing is because I'm so, I wouldn't say wishy-washy, but I'm just like interested in so many different things. I never feel like I've landed in like what I do creatively. And I'm working on being more content with where I am creatively. It's just sometimes I feel like, oh, I should have been a specialist at this one thing, but I'm not. Like, I don't feel like I'm a specialist. I feel like I like putting all the pieces together and making a thing out of it, which is why this is perfect, because then I can just talk to people who have the specialties and learn about it and make whatever creative act that we're doing together, whatever dance this is. It makes me more content about it, but it's something that I always appreciated about people who do the type of work that you do, in that like, wow, you're doing it. You're making a living out of it.
I think you're super smart and super creative, and you're like one of those people that anything that you set your mind to, you're really good at it. So I think that's your talent, is you're just like, you are highly creative. Like we're sitting on this podcast right now that I would have never thought of. So
yeah. One thing I like to make people feel comfortable in like chatting with me, because I'm very introverted, which is really hilarious that I decided to start a podcast. Like, I don't want to go out. I don't want to meet too many people. But, like, in this one-on-one setting, people who are maybe don't think they have enough to share, that's what I like. I like being able to be like, all right, so tell me about, like, I never even asked you, like, what's it like to tour? Like, I feel like there's a glamorized idea of, like, touring and traveling. But I've been in airports enough times to know that that shit is not fun. Like, what is touring like for you?
It is rough. It's rough on you physically, emotionally, mentally, all of the above. It's just, I don't know why it's so glamorized. It's just a bus. You know what I mean? And it's like living in a trailer with literally 12 other people sharing a bus. And I think you get to see places, and there's like the good aspects of it, but then you're working 18-hour days. You never shower in the same place. You never know what your food's going to look like, if you're going to be able to have like healthy options, or what the case is. It's unpredictable. It's uncomfortable most of the time. You're going to be spinning in a bunk, and there's going to be somebody sleeping above you, somebody sleeping beneath you, and you need to be quiet, and you need to keep your stuff consolidated. You can't have when you take your shoes off, you need to like, you're thinking about, how, am I going to piss somebody off whenever I put my shoes down here? That kind of thing. Like it's, you know, I'm getting to the point in my life that I want to tour, but I want to limit how much I tour because I just, for my health, I think it's just not,
I was gonna
long-term, it's
ask,
not
like,
good for me.
can you do that forever? Like, that's not sustainable.
I used to think that that was like the dream job, and now I'm like, you know what? I like hotels, but I also like my own home. I like going to my gym. I like being able to go to Ralph's and go get my groceries that I want and eat the way that I want, and you know, have the people around me that I want. And sometimes you're around personalities that you realize that you're never going to get along with and that do not like you for no reason. Like some personalities just are never going to like each other. But then you realize, oh my God, I'm going to have to see this person every morning for the next 8 weeks, and they're going to be in my bus, that kind of thing. Like it has its disadvantages. I think it pays
Yeah,
well, but it's, yeah,
that's the hazard pay. I mean, you're that's
exactly.
yeah. So okay, so with that in mind, what does your future work look like if you want to try to be more mindful of your balance? You know, as a lighting designer, where does your career shift to get there?
And my next steps are me and my business partner are gonna start building our own studio and for forming our own design firm. That is like we're full time designing. We're still gonna go out with the projects, but maybe I'm sending someone out to operate. We're programming it for them, very similar to Silent House, which ironically, so
Yeah,
that would be my next step. And then like I want a life like where I'm not tied to a tour bus or I
yeah.
love traveling, but I don't want to do it for 8 weeks at a time, 12 weeks at a time, all the time.
It's so full circle, it seems. Like, in that, like, you started your career learning from these guys in this production firm house. And it seems like that's kind of the route that where you're going, which sounds more sustainable in a sense of balance.
Hmm.
But like now you're gonna be that person for someone else, for that next lighting
Yes.
designer. And you're now hopefully you can start touching like these larger, maybe larger, even larger shows by designing it. Because you're not physically stuck in the tour bus and being the operator. You're more of the pre-production creative mind behind it.
Yeah.
That's the goal, I
It's
assume.
yeah, it's definitely more front-loaded work. But you know, it also gives me the ability to identify these young gun LDs that are coming in and knowing the impression that they have of me and that they are probably slightly on edge about working with me. So I'm like I'm trying my best to be like, because like we did a tour recently where we brought in an LD. The LD was already working with the artist, very similar to how I was working with Khalid, but we were going to be taking it over and like designing it and programming it. And I went in knowing that he probably is going to be a little offended that I'm like kind of like in his, territory here.
Yeah.
So like knowing that treated him the way that I would have wanted to be treated whenever I came in with Silent House. And it really was, it ended up working out really well because I didn't come in acting like some hot shot that knows
Yeah.
everything. Like, okay, you're just going to sit there and I'm going to do this. Like, I was like, what do you think of this? Like, do you have a process that works better for you? Like, that my way is not perfect. Like letting that person know that like, I am also learning and I was also in your
Mm.
seat at one point. So like, let's work together here. And that works really well. So you just be a nice person and you'll go far.
Yeah. I love how thoughtful that is in that like yes, you're the position that you've been put in. I guess technically in the hierarchy of it, like you're above, but you approached it in a collaborative sense. You approached it as a kind person, like at the base level, but you didn't impose, especially in the beginning. The first impressions is probably just like it makes such a big difference when you can gain trust right away. And once you've gained that trust, you could say anything and they'd be like, okay, I think let me think about it, rather than going, this asshole doesn't know what he's talking about. Like
I mean, there were
that's
even
amazing.
times where I would say, I really think that we should go this direction. And he would say, no, I want to do this way. And in my head, I'm thinking, no, it's going to look better if we go this way. But I would just be quiet and be like, you know what? Let's see it. Let's see you build it. And then seeing how proud he was of it after he would build it means more to me. That's not going to matter in the grand scheme of things because if I develop this person, they're going to become great on their own. so I was more focused on building this person up rather than like trying to like show them that like I've been doing this a long time, it should be red. When they want it to be blue, okay, like let it be blue and it's going to look great, and like I trust you, and them having that sense of empowerment will go a lot further than trying to like show them the hierarchy of how things work. I think
Yeah. Oh, that's so
works better.
mature. That's such a mature way to look at
Oh
things. It
shit.
just seems so pleasant. Like I imagine that you didn't deal with like it wasn't pleasant all the time, I'm sure. As you've
No,
kind of alluded to, it's been a rough road and you seem to be
it has been
in
rough.
yeah. Man, it sucks to hear that, and I'm glad that you can still come out of that looking at it going, how can I change this, and how could I be bettered? Is that a word? How can I be made better through that experience? And some people just kind of get stuck in that kind of defensive mode, which is hard. It's
Mhm.
hard to live like that. It's hard to have longevity if you're always like that forever.
And you can totally cut this part out of the interview or America. I'm going to be super
America.
vulnerable. Whenever I first started running into personalities that were super cutthroat and super toxic, guys that were in their 50s that have been doing this, that were could see that I was green and that were like, I'm going to play this person, and I just was too young to see that those signs. I started drinking, and I kind of it turned into a problem for me, and I leaned
Mm.
on it and I leaned into it, and it just became something that I dealt with for a few years that really impacted my health. And I will say I became an alcoholic for a hot minute just to
Yeah.
cope with the stress of the industry. And I had to come out of that. And that has been a work in progress since like 20, changed my whole life and my whole structure. And I've prioritized my physical health because that is so tied into my mental health and my emotional state. And that has totally changed my life. Taking care of yourself physically and putting your physical health above everything else is like that is the key to really hanging in there. And I feel like a
Yeah.
lot of people in my industry, there's a lot of alcohol involved. There's always alcohol in the bus, alcohol backstage. It's accessible, so it's easy to take a couple shots here and there just to get through, just to bring everything down a little bit, the anxiety down. And I was doing that, and it really turned into a problem and really messed me up. And I lost
Yeah.
friends, and I messed up, and so
Wow.
there has not been this like perfect journey to get here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, like if you don't mind me sharing this part of your
No.
story, like I don't I always appreciate when people have just like your vulnerability in that is just so amazing to me, one. And then two, like, I don't know, I guess I'm sorry I wasn't there for you in that time. Like sometimes we fall out, like life happens and then I don't know, it's just been so nice to talk to you the last few weeks, even. We chime in with each
Likewise.
other and I can sense that like you're in a good mental space, or at least you're on your way, even just by the texts that we send each other. Yeah, I don't know, like I'm really happy to hear that you're on the mend and all the negativity is still there, but you can recognize it. And I think
Hmm.
that's like the biggest thing. It's like I think it'd be foolish to be like the negativity is all gone, I'm happy, I'm good. And you sharing that, like, that shit sucks. But
Yeah.
I don't know. You posted something during our conversation a couple days ago, and I don't know. It was just it's really nice to see people own up to that kind of stuff, but then also like, not let it hold them back, I guess. Yeah.
I just think people want to always present the best image of themselves. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
kind of in this new era of no, like you can see me mess up, like this is who I am kind of thing.
Mm.
And it's okay to admit that you messed up and to because that gives you the opportunity to become a better person. And that's kind of where I'm at now. Like in the industry that I work in, like a lot, I've heard of many people say this: don't apologize, you'll lose respect. Like don't ever apologize because then you just admitted defeat. Well, like that's
Wow.
not how I'm gonna live. If I mess up, I'm gonna like I haven't always lived by this, but like I'm gonna go and make it right, and I'm gonna apologize and I'll be like, yo, like I fucked up, sorry, I'm an idiot. Like
Yeah.
whatever the case is, that you're gonna grow from that, and the other person is gonna probably like you a little bit more for being transparent with them because they probably make mistakes too. So
Yeah. This was great, man. I really appreciate you sharing all that. But all right, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be on here. And on the next episode, we'll be talking about time code. No, I'm kidding now.
Time code, yes.
No, but thank you, dude.
2-hour episode on time code. All right, we'll catch you later. All right, let me stop.